Hey YouTube, how you doing? Hope you're all well, and a special hello to my 22 splendid subscribers. Thank you very much for that. If you need anything, just drop me a message and I'll see if I can do a video and help you lot out. This has been a few weeks since I did my last video. Main reason being there wasn't really much for me to do. I had the frame taken off and I was told by the surgeon that I can't do anything for 2 weeks. So I've been basically on my bed, and when I've been using my crutches, I was only allowed to go on the tips of my toes, ball of a foot, whereas when I was on my frame, I was encouraged to put as much weight through the leg as possible. So because the frame is totally off, and I've got this area here, where the bone density has decreased due to the lack of mobility, and also I don't have the frame to stabilize the leg and the knee. The surgeons just said basically just take 2 weeks off, work on some flexibility of the knee, and then just take it from there. So the 2 weeks were up. I went to see the surgeon last Tuesday, which was Tuesday the 11th of January 2022, and I had all the plasters taken off, as you can see, and he is very, very happy with the results. No problems at all there. Healing process went very, very well indeed. As you can see, that one was a big one. Just there. The downside of me healing so well is because I'm a bloke and basically got a big kid inside of me, I wanted some scabs to pick, but there wasn't anything. Everything was healed up nicely. So as I say, went to see the surgeon last week, and he said, right, it's time to get going again. Start moving, but I've got to be careful because as I mentioned earlier, the bone density from here to here has decreased because I basically haven't been doing anything through that joint, and unfortunately if you don't use it, you lose it. So 4 weeks time I've got to go back and see him, and by then he's given me the challenge. Well, actually I've given myself a challenge and he's agreed to it, that I'm hopeful that I may not be completely crutchless free, but I'll certainly be doing a lot more walking without the crutches. Maybe not all day, but he wants me to start putting weight through the leg. He said for the first week don't do too much. Second week, which basically is this week, I can start doing a bit more, and then so on for the weeks leading up to it. So what was it, September I did the break. Since September, every time I've been laying down or I've been sitting, I've always had my leg up. Now what that does is it shortens the hip flexors, the quadriceps, because the leg is bent, because the leg is straight, the leg definitely isn't bent, the leg is straight. The other thing I've noticed is when I had the frame on, again with a previous video, I had a band which I was able to pull the foot back, which stretched the Achilles, stretched the lower calf muscle, the soleus, and it stretched the upper calf muscle, the gastroc. So when I was able to move around, the foot position was a lot easier to just get nice and flat, and my walking gait was a lot more sound. What I've noticed just in 1 week of not having the frame is sleeping and just generally being in this position, my foot has lengthened. My foot has pointed basically, which has lengthened all these muscle groups here, and unfortunately it shortened all these muscle groups here. So the first thing I've got to do if I want to start to walk again is to get that flexibility back into the calf muscle groups, because as we walk and we take our leg behind us, we need that flexibility through this whole junction. If we don't have the flexibility, then our gait will be short, and the heel will lift up far too early, and we want that flexibility, especially if I'm going to be doing some running later on, some cycling, some rowing, some squats, lunges, deadlifts, all that sort of stuff needs the ability of the knee to go beyond the tip of the toe, which requires flexibility here. The other things I need to be working on are the quad flexibility, so I can bend my knee a lot more, and also the hip flexor flexibility, so I can actually take my leg behind the body. And that's all before, or as well as, getting the glute stronger, getting the quadriceps strong, the hamstrings and the calf, because it's very difficult to be strong if we don't have any muscle. So that's what I'm going to be working on. The first thing I'm going to be looking at is flexibility through the ankle joint, flexibility through the knee joint, which is coming along very, very slowly, and flexibility of the hip, so basically being able to take the leg behind my body. While I'm in this position, I may as well talk about the knee flexibility. So one of the simple exercises I can do here while I'm watching TV or just laying in bed, laying on the sofa, is taking this away and just bringing the leg back. As I bring the leg back, personally for me, I'm finding this area here is very tight. That's my first bit of response. So you're convinced all this will be tight as well, but for the time being, I'm finding a lot of restriction in this area. Maybe it's because that's where the pins went through, maybe, not too sure. And I'm getting a lot of restriction underneath the knee where the actual break was itself. So one of the exercises I'm doing at the moment, or one of the stretches I'm doing, which is really, really simple, bending the knee, feeling a stretch. So remember, you can lengthen a limb and you can stretch a limb, or you can lengthen a muscle and you can stretch a muscle. And my definition of the difference between the two of them is a stretch is a neural reflex. So in other words, as you stretch a muscle, as you lengthen the muscle, if you go so far that you get into a position where the muscle isn't used to it, what the muscle will do is the muscle will actually start to pull. And that's what a stretch sensation is. The nervous system will say pull as you're trying to lengthen. If you just put an arm behind your body, you are lengthening your bicep, but you may not feel a stretch in the bicep, if you get what I mean. If you don't, leave a message and I'll just see if I can explain it in a different way with more clarity. So that's what I mean. So the first thing is, I'm just going to bend my knee. I'm just going to, first of all, feel the stretch response, and I'm just going to stay there. I could put something behind my foot just to stop it from wanting to lengthen back out again. I'm just going to bend that knee there. As you hold a stretch for a duration of time, usually around about 2 to 3 minutes, what you'll notice is the stretch will start to disappear, even though we haven't actually done anything with the actual angle of the knee. Now the reason here is because the nervous system realizes it's not under stress, or it's not under a threat of breaking, so therefore it relaxes, and the stretch response, or the stretch feeling, will decrease, as it already has done now. So what I will then do is I'll just bend that knee a tiny bit. The more you get to your full range of movement at the current time, the less improvement you'll have. So then it becomes a doing more stretching during the day, and or doing longer stretches, and then taking those days into weeks, and then taking those weeks into months. So just be holding this, getting a stretch. So because I'm a self-employed personal trainer, and I've had to work from September all the way through to make sure I've kept money coming in, so I can pay my bills, pay rent, get some food and things like that. If you are interested in some personal training or even just a consultation, leave a message, get some contact details passed over, and we'll see what we can do. But during my training, giving the training session, I use that as an opportunity to do some physio work for myself. Because it's at such a basic level, I don't really need to do much at all. So to begin with, when I had the frame on, the exercise was just to stand up for as long as possible. standing up, transferring the weight over to the left leg, and just trying to get a lot more weight through the whole structure. Now the frame's off and the goal is to bend the knee. I'm finding that I can do my PT sitting down, and what I now do during the session is, while I'm focused on the particular client, all I will do, and it's very, very simple for you lot, or for some of you, and it'll be very complex for others like myself. So all I'll do is, I would normally start off obviously with a straight leg with a frame, because it was stopping my knee from bending, which would be quite uncomfortable sitting down for a long time. So now what's happening is I'm just starting to bend my leg. I bend my leg so far so that I feel a restriction around the knee, and that will be the stretch reflex. And I'll just stay here for, well, within reason, as long as necessary. Soon as things start to die down a little bit in terms of I don't feel so much of a stretch, in other words, the muscles and the nervous system aren't being responsive and saying, don't bend, don't bend, don't bend. As soon as I feel that, then I take my leg back a little bit further. I want to be able to sit down normally, I want to be able to cycle, I want to be able to squat, and this is the basic position for all of those. So I need to get the range of movement back into the system first before I do too much, or any really strength work. So I'll just stay here for as long as necessary. If it doesn't hurt, then you can stay here for even longer. As soon as that stretch response decreases, which it has a little bit, but for the process of this video, I come back a little bit further. Now what I'm doing is I'm taking mental notes of where the knee is to where my ankle is. And that's just going to give me an update about how flexible my knee's becoming. The other thing I could do as well is, let's just grab this, is at the beginning of the session, as long as I'm sitting in the same position, at the beginning of the session, I'll put a marker on the floor. And that will tell me at the beginning of the session where I started from. And then I can bend my knee and I can see how far we're going. If I need to stand up or do anything else, I'll try and remember my seated position in terms of where my butt is, on the chair or on the bed or on the sofa. And I'll just use this and I'll move it. The other thing I can do is I could measure from the wall, from the bed, from the chair to where the heel is. And if we take the other leg, for instance, that can go all the way back and I don't feel any stretch whatsoever. So I want to be able to marry that up. I'll need it to be mirrored in the other side, if possible, if possible. I know I'm not going to get 100% flexibility and I know I'm not going to get 100% strength on this leg, but I need as much balance in flexibility and strength as possible. So that's one of the exercises I'm working on just to help with the knee bends, and even just talking for that short amount of time, or some of you probably feeling it's a long time, I just take it back a little bit further. Now, at this point, this is actually the furthest I've been, because I'm feeling something new now. Where it used to be the inside of the leg, which I felt, which is what I explained when I was on the bed, what I'm now feeling is I'm now feeling a lot more stretch around this area here. So I would just hang out in that position and see how things go. If the tension doesn't decrease, say after 3 to 5 minutes, I won't go any further, but always make sure when you've done something quite intense stretching, and for me this is quite an intense stretch, it's going to be a little bit painful just coming back again. Oh, that wasn't too bad, that wasn't too bad. And we'll come back. So to be able to bend the knee, I need flexibility in the quadriceps, plus I need the hamstrings to be receptive, because it's the hamstrings that bend the knee with the assistance of the flexibility of the quadriceps, and then it's the quadriceps that straighten the knee with the assistance of flexibility with the hamstrings and one of those calf muscles that cross over. So that's all about knee flexion and knee extension. I'm trying to get a lot straighter through this junction and trying to get a lot more work going through the quadriceps. So the knee flexion and extension is really easy to do just sitting down. You can do this watching the TV, just do whenever you need to do it. The other thing we need to work on, because there's lots of joints associated with walking, and then the other joint which we need to look at is the calf or the ankle joint, which has the Achilles, which has the lower calf muscle, the upper calf muscle, and muscles also work in opposites. So as one muscle shortens, the opposing muscle has got to lengthen, like the bicep and tricep. So here we've got the calves, if you will, and then we have the shin muscles, the peroneal muscles. As we bring the foot up, the calf muscles will lengthen and the peroneal muscles will shorten. Again, we need that as we walk. Do it gingerly. As we walk and we take the leg behind us, let's move this out of the way. So as we walk and the leg goes behind us, we need the ankle joint to close, which requires calf flexibility, and we need the leg to go behind the body, which is hip flexor mobility. So what I can do here is I can do some very basic calf stretches. Now the other thing we also know is when we walk and we transfer the back leg forward, is the knee bends, the heel lifts up, and now the toes stretch. So every time we stretch the toes in this position, what we're actually doing is we're shortening the calf muscles. So it's really nice to get both these movements together. Stretching the toes out and all the tendons and ligaments underneath the foot. And then stretch the calf out. Stretch the toes out. Stretch the calf out. Now to help with stretching the toes out and to help with activating these muscle groups here, we can lift the foot up, but also lift your toes up as well. So push the heel down and you can lift the toes up to increase the stretch. Bend the ankle, and although you're not going to get really any movement whatsoever, you're going to get a lot of neural feedback. Try and lift the toes up as much as you can. Every time you try and lift the toes up, you're stimulating all this junction of the nervous system, and the more work you put through it, the stronger that response becomes. We have what are called action potentials, and action potentials are basically your thought about making a muscle contract. The more you focus on it, the stronger the neural impulse will go to that part of where you're trying to work, and the stronger that contraction will be. So we stretch the calf, and we try and lift the toes up. We can see I've still got a knee bend. It's not ideal. I need to do a lot more work through the quadriceps. I need more flexibility through this junction here and through the calves, but we just got to be patient. Just be patient. Heel down, move forwards. You can see that heel lifts up. So I don't want to say I've gone too far, but I've gone as far as my calf flexibility allows me, and that's the whole reason that heel lifts up. I need a lot more mobility, flexibility and strength to be able to walk. And if I don't have the flexibility, I'm not going to be walking as well as I could do. So we just keep stretching. In terms of times, how long? Well, first of all, it depends on how painful it is. And I do mean pain and not just a stretching pain. So I would probably hold, so this is literally the first thing that I've been doing. So I will probably hold for maybe 30 seconds, and then 30 seconds, and then see how that feels. If everything feels good, I'll then hold for 45 seconds, and for 45 seconds, maybe even transitioning backwards and forwards through. Ideally, I want to be building this up to 3 minutes. The reason I choose 3 minutes is because whenever we stretch a muscle and it's a little bit too tight, the nervous system will take over too much, and it's very, very difficult to beat a nervous system which is wanting to tighten up the muscles. So the first minute is just really about trying to relax the nervous system and just get some basic mobility going through the joints and the muscles that you're looking at working. The second minute, you can actually start to go a little bit further, because you would have got a response from that nervous system and it would have down-regulated, or I suppose up-regulated, because it's what you want. The nervous system, just because we've increased flexibility, doesn't mean the nervous system dies. What actually happens is, if I take my puny calf, for instance, we have a nervous system which goes to the muscle, and that tells the muscle spindles to contract. We also have the nervous system that goes to the end of the muscles, actually in the tendons, and they are called the Golgi tendon organ, or the GTO. When the GTOs fire up, they actually tell the muscle spindles to relax. So it's not that we actually lose any neural drive. All that happens is we change so much neural drive from the calves, and we place it, or from the muscle spindles, and we place it to the GTOs. Okay, so we've got quad flexibility, knee bend, trying to get that heel back as much as possible. And as we start to stretch out the calf muscle, it then allows us also to get that heel back a little bit further. So we've got the knee flexibility, and then we've got the calf and toe flexibility as well. Okay. Just really work hard on pushing down. Also try and get the quads working, because I know my knees bent, and it's potentially because of how tight these muscle groups are, but also just the absolute underactivation of anything that's going on through the quadriceps. So I've got to try and get those quads back on again. And as I contract my quads, or as you contract your quads, what you'll notice is your kneecap will pull up. Now as you pull the kneecap up, you have a ligament which comes from the kneecap, the patella, and it joins onto the tibia. Now it's the tibia which I shattered. So when I pull my kneecap up and the tendon tightens up, I feel some pain across here. Now this is a new movement for me since the break, so I'm just going to bear with it, and I'm going to keep trying to get the nervous system firing up as much as possible, and that's just going to help me later on down the line. And the final main element I need to be working on is getting the hip flexors flexible to be able to take my leg behind me. So the hip flexors, they shorten and they flex the hip. The glute muscles extend the hip and take the leg behind me. Now walking and running, I'm going to need that hip flexibility back again, and I'm going to need that hip extension back again. So one way I can do this, and I can introduce a quad stretch with a hip flexor stretch. Now I can introduce a quad stretch because my quads aren't very flexible. You may actually find that you don't get a quad stretch with this whatsoever. So you will be looking at trying to take the knee behind the body, or in other words, the knee behind the hip, which means all this junction is going to be stretching here. You've got one quadricep, your middle quadricep, which actually crosses the hip, which is why it's quite nice to get a combination of both the hip extension and the knee bend as well, the knee flexion. So I'm looking at taking my knee behind my body, behind the hip, which should be a result of the bum muscle working. So while I take that leg behind, and I need to try and square my hips up. Whichever leg you take behind, it's like with lunges, whichever leg you take behind, if we are tight, the body will just say, what's the point of stretching? That hurt, takes up a lot of energy, let's just rotate the pelvis. But biomechanically, that's not very sound for what I'm trying to do for running or anything like that. So the first thing I'll do, and this bed might actually be a little bit too high to begin with, but I can just lean forward a little bit more. So the first thing I want to try and do is just square those hips up. That in itself, I'm finding every time I move my left hip forwards, squeezing the butt cheek as much as I can do, I'm getting a much deeper stretch around here. A little bit painful, but manageable. Just move around, but most importantly, really try and work on squeezing the butt cheeks. Because remember, the butt cheeks produce hip extension. The hip flexors produce hip flexion, and it's the butt muscles. So when you're running, or when you're walking even, going upstairs, you want to be able to squeeze that butt cheek and just get it working. So again, I'll hold it for around about maybe 30, well it's been a minute now, but 30 to 40 seconds, and then I'll slowly come back out, and I'll see how that is. I'll then go back and do it for 45 seconds, for a minute, and then slowly but surely building it up to 3 minutes. I hope all this has helped. If you need anything, as always, leave a message. If you fancy a consultation or a bit of a chat, leave some details somewhere. You can catch me on Instagram. The link is in the page somewhere, and we can get chatting there. If you need anything else, just leave a message underneath. Subscribe, ring the bell. Let's see how you do. Good luck with it all. Be strong. Speak to you later. Bye bye.